On this episode of the Startup Junkies podcast, we're joined by Leo Orpin, the co-founder of Black Apple Hard Cider. As Black Apple approaches their 10-year anniversary, Leo talks about how they've grown slowly, failed quickly, and taken the time to make strategic decisions based off of their specific markets. Tune in to this awesome episode. This is the Startup Junkies podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thanks for tuning in from wherever and however you're tuning in with us today. My name is Caleb. I am a startup junkie and joined by Startup Junkie podcast co-host Daniel. How's it going?
It's going awesome. It's a beautiful Monday afternoon here in Northwest Arkansas. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing great because we've got some Black Apple Hard Cider.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. We're joined by our friend, returning podcast guest, Leo Orpin of Black Apple Hard Cider. How's it going, Leo?
Great to be back. Yeah.
Excited to have you back.
First post-COVID episode.
Yeah.
I can't wait to
Nothing's changed.
chat with you guys. No, nothing. It's all about the same. Yeah.
Well, for our listeners who didn't listen to your episode back in 2018,
Yeah.
tell them a little bit about what Black Apple is.
Yeah. So Black Apple is the first and somehow 10 years later, only cidery in the state of Arkansas. We strive to make a clean and unadulterated beverage, which I used to stop the sentence there. But now I realize people are like, no, we need a little more. What do you mean by that? So we're one of the few alcoholic beverages that actually are very transparent with our nutritional information, our ingredient list. We are naturally gluten-free, no sulfites or preservatives added. We even stay away from common allergens. You're never going to see a peanut butter cider. Okay. That's a very important, transparency is a very important brand pillar for us. So that's what kind of separates us from any other cidery in the country. And then we also have a downtown tap room in Springdale, Arkansas. And we just went full bar with it in October. Very exciting. So you can get anything from 14 different ciders on tap to beer, wine, cocktails. We have maybe one of the best cocktail programs. I'm a little biased, but I put it up against any of them up here. It's fantastic. So yeah.
Great place to spend an evening, afternoon, sunny patio, however you want to spend your day. It's a good way to spend it.
Especially on a day like today, huh?
Of course. Yeah. I might have to go there after this.
There you go.
So tell us a little bit about your origin story, your journey. Where did you start and how did you get to where you are today?
What I always tell people is if you ever want to start your own cidery, get a background in sport management. That's the key. That's what I did.
Yeah.
And that's what got me to this point. Went to the University of Arkansas for sport management degree, spent about 5-6 years working just in the world of sports, just jumping around the United States. And then made it back here. And it was my friend, Trey Holt, who is now co-founder, Black Apple. He and I would just homebrew as a hobby, different English style beers, ciders over his house on Wednesdays. We'd cook out barbecue, wait for the brew to make its drink. And then that was it. And so it eventually went from, this hobby to this running joke of what if it became a business. And so I decided to make a hard right turn and went into alcohol distribution just to see if it's something I was even remotely interested in, because Trey was a microbiologist for Tyson. So he already had all the science figured out. I wanted to see, can we make money doing this? Is this something I would be excited in and have a passion for? So I jumped into a budding craft beer distributor and worked a few years there before we decided, we're going to get a building randomly in downtown Springdale, which was desolate back then. It was, you guys go there now, for any of you guys who have never been in downtown Springdale, it is night and day different, even from 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago when we, bought the building. So yeah, and then the rest is kind of history. We opened a tap room. It's the building itself is an 8,000 square feet facility that was best known as George's Chicken's first office and hatchery. And we decided to take the back half of it, a little 700 square foot, to make a little tap room that you had to come round the back like a speakeasy to come, because there wasn't anything going on in Emma. We were, other than tumbleweeds and us playing football, there wasn't anything down there. And now, and we started with 4 ciders, and now we're at 14 full bar, taking over the entire building, barely fitting in the walls. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah. It sounds like it. So you guys correct me if I'm wrong. You guys just had your 10-year anniversary, correct?
We're about to.
You're about to.
Yeah, so at the end of July,
End
we
of
will
July.
be 10 years official. We'll be celebrating Sunday, I believe it's July 27th, so mark your calendars. We'll be taking over downtown Springdale.
Okay, so that was my
Now-
question is, can you tell us a little bit about that celebration? And this is a two-parter.
Yeah.
What are some of the differences you've seen in year 6 to 10 in terms of challenges you faced versus, maybe year 1 to 5?
Well, I think 1 to 5 was dominated by just pure ignorance, right? Like that's any entrepreneur's journey. Like we're all in the same circles, right? And there's just this excitement with just the unknown. You're invincible. You can't be stopped. We were scaling like nobody's business. In 2019, we projected 2020 to nearly be double what we did in 2019. Like 2020 was going to be a huge, huge year. And on top of that, we were in Europe at we went to it was called the Cider expo there in Koonce, France. And it was the first time we went international, and we were comparing how we were doing on the international stage. And we were one of the last planes to leave when COVID started locking everybody down. So we barely made it back to the United States, only to have everything shut down and it'd be our worst year ever.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if anybody was expecting this to be sunshine and rainbows. We're dealing with some harsh truths. But what's nice is we made it 10 years. So I guess we're about to, right?
Early
End of July. End of July. We're going to make it. There was a lot of pivots and a lot of learning, and I think we're better off because of it. So I think those first 5 years, very heavy scaling, very heavy, we're just going to attack. And I think when COVID came, there were a lot of businesses that faced that with we're going to take a step back because we don't know what this is. And we decided just to keep charging. Better for worse. We just leaned in and we learned a lot of lessons from that. And so these last however many years now, since it feels like COVID's prehistoric now, it feels like decades and decades ago now. It's been dealing with supply chains, dealing with margin suppression, dealing with emerging markets, new competition that came post-COVID. There's different innovations and how they hit white spaces. There's so many things that just evolved over the last 3-4 years, and we're just pivoting, ducking, and dodging year over year as we go. And I think a lot of cool things came out of that. I mean, I'm not saying it was easy, but a lot of cool stuff came out of it. Like what we talked about, the full bar program that we're doing at the tap room, like some innovations like the mangonada that I brought here, which is delightful.
Delicious.
Again, I know I sound biased, but it is. It's great.
I specifically remember y'all's trip to Europe, France, because I believe Jeff came back with an original strand of COVID. When
That may have been our fault. Yes, I think Jeff did bring it to the United
What is
States.
this? Why am I so sick?
Yeah, that was rough.
But I would almost argue that kind of blind optimism, not knowing what you don't know type of thing, but just eager and willing, serves you better in the first 5 years, as opposed to, we have had conversations and on the podcast and outside of it with folks that, and we ask, what might you do different? What advice would you take? That sort of thing. And, some have said if they knew what they knew now, they might not have continued within those first few years because they didn't know, how resilient they needed to be. And then that, serves you well in the first few years and then informs you in your next half, I guess. So it just all serves a purpose.
Well, I mean, it's a gigantic risk just to start a business in general. It's a huge risk, right? And so I think that, to your point, that ignorance, that excitement, you're more willing to take risk early on. You're willing to jump on ideas. But then that also means that you're probably not spending as much time in the spreadsheets, and you're focusing more on fun events and community engagement and testing the product, when you should be checking your costs and things. But that's stuff that you kind of learn as you go. You kind of have to go through the meat grinder,
And thinking about where y'all are in Springdale, and to your point about it kind of not being what it is today. You look at some of the downtowns across Northwest Arkansas, and I feel like y'all were like that flag planted in the ground in downtown Springdale. That's kind of, you go there now and there are things to do, restaurants to go to, stuff to do. And it's like, I kind of view y'all as that pillar of like that kind of reemergence there.
It is miraculous to see that evolution from like, that was 2014 when we literally stumbled upon that building, and till now, like we have everything from reservation only French restaurants in downtown Springdale, where before like it was just the taqueria next to us, right?
Which is very good.
It was just amazing. Taqueria Dunguero, can't say enough good things. And they're actually one of the few handfuls of businesses that lasted from that time period. There's not a lot of them left. Most of these businesses in downtown, most of these buildings are all been built very recent. I think up until 4 years ago, the residential in downtown Springdale, as far as the corridor that they call downtown Springdale, there hadn't been any new residential buildings, houses, apartments, anything since 1998. And then all of them started sprouting out now. It's crazy what's kind of going on. And I think that was another thing that made us lean into that full bar program, is that we're seeing all of this excitement and innovation, all this new traffic that we'd never seen. We just didn't want to be left behind. And so we're like, we need to innovate. So we moved our bar up front to be an activation point for Emma. Because I think before, do you guys remember the stage? We used to have that like big stage up front. I think people were walking by who had never been to downtown Springdale, and they look into our window without reading the sign. They'd be like, oh, cool community theater. And then they just keep walking, right? And so like just even having the bar up front has made like all the difference for like, well, we know what this is. We're going to try it. We're going to try it out. And I find that from the people that are walking in now, it's like, I think that's the biggest thing I'm running into with the tap room, is that you have people that treat us kind of like, I joke, like an airplane museum, right? It's like, oh, I've been to the cidery before. Yeah, when was that? Oh, it's 2017, I think. It's like, you should come back.
Just try it again.
You should come back. And what we notice is like when we bring some of those guys back who haven't been in years, they're like, oh my God, we're going to start having our company after hours here. We're going to have our club meet here, or Rotary, or whatever. And like, so
Startup Junkie networking event.
Yeah, absolutely. That went great. What a fantastic event. Yeah. So that's something we're leaning on this year, with just the momentum that downtown Springdale's been having. Like it's been amazing.
And candidly, it feels slightly more organic than potentially some of the other downtown revitalizations that we see up and down 49. And this is my opinion and based on no fact at all. But kind of looking at some of these other emerging downtowns, you see a significant investment in not just the housing or the residential aspect. I feel like that follows kind of a lot of the other infrastructural updates. But like your Crystal Bridges in Benville, or your kind of in Rogers, the rail yard, stuff like that, that kind of seeds that reemergence of those downtown areas. Whereas Springdale, it's more organic, it feels like, from the outside looking in. I don't know if that's feels the same for y'all.
Well, I think it's a little different when you're in it. Yeah. Right. So like, I think early on, the good news was we didn't necessarily need it to be quick, because we had the multiple revenue streams. We had the retail, but then we also very heavily reliant on our wholesale. So, we're full state Arkansas. You can find us in any retailer, bars, and restaurants. We're about to be full state Oklahoma. We're northeast Oklahoma right now, and we're launching into Kansas, full state Kansas this year. So having that really helped our business model survive those early years of like just kind of a desolate downtown that was undergoing like some key revitalization. So most of those businesses that were emerging in those first 5 years with us, most of them aren't there anymore. They were gone. They tried, they couldn't stick it out. They didn't have a long-term plan, but just, I think what I've noticed is that it felt like the first 7-8 years of it seemed really, really tedious and slow, really tedious. And then I feel like in the last 2-3 years, it just blew up, where you had like 4, 5, 6 major businesses, or 4 or 5 major housing complexes just all start under construction all at once. And the next thing you know, there's sidewalks are filled with people and the streets are back to back. And we're talking about parking Like in downtown Springdale, we're talking about like, should we have a parking deck? And I'm like, am I in Fayetteville? Like, what is this? Like, it's wild to think about. Yeah, but it is. I mean, just again, if I would say to anybody listening to this, if they haven't been downtown Springdale, even in been a year or two, it's going to be completely different than when you've been. That's how quick things are moving down there.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by Black Apple Hard Cider. Black Apple is Arkansas's first cidery, producing incredible hard ciders in its natural state. You can try over 14 flavors in their downtown Springdale tap room, along with a full bar with cocktails, wines, and various other incredible beverages. When you visit their tap room, mention the Startup Junkies podcast and get a cider flight half off. Thanks again, and check them out at blackappleHardCider.com. And I'm glad you kind of touched on some of these other states you're moving into. You're moving full state Oklahoma, full state Kansas soon. When you move into these markets outside of Arkansas, how do you balance the feeling of, being this local brand and then expanding into, a new region where customers maybe don't know who you are yet?
That's a big challenge because we kind of have an unfair advantage here in Arkansas. We call it it's similar to like sports recruiting.
Your home field advantage.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really hoping that a lot of your listeners are sports fans, because if not, these analogies are not going to hit. But like, you're putting the fence around the state, like being Arkansas's only cidery, like being able to go to a bar, restaurant, retailer. It's almost like you walk in, you're wearing the shirt, you're telling them who you are. And there's just this immediate shame of, oh God, I don't have this and I need this, right? You don't get that when you go into Oklahoma or Missouri or any of these other states that we're looking at. Like you have to go beyond like that I'm just local. And so one of the ways that we go about that is talking about like our, our USPs, our unique selling points. So like we're like that unadulterated, the clean that we talk about. We go into analytical data as far as like, there's a lot of education with cider. There's still some states, Arkansas was no different, that they don't know what a cider is. Like I'd walk into places that, they're calling it a beer, or which is natural because it's served similar,
It's not an ale, like some, there's my introduction to what I thought was a cider was, not to mention another brand, but Red's several years ago. But that's an ale, as I understand.
It is.
So it's different. So yeah,
and that's actually a dangerous example, because what we learned when we opened the cidery is like we had a really decent portion of our demographics that were celiac. Which means that they're not just gluten intolerant, that it could like make them very, very sick to have gluten, or even kill them in some cases. And so like to have something like, your example of Red's Apple Ale, where it's like it's marketed as though it's like a cider, for somebody just to grab that unknowingly, it could have some consequences. And I think that was another reason we leaned so heavily into the transparency when we did this. And so that's one of the things that we learned, I think, also with the international, we had some awards that we went through. And so we've been overseas a couple of times to do some benchmarks, that we have such a unique product that we don't have to rely necessarily on the local aspect of it. But I do still think it helps with the bordering states, because we are doing a pipeline growth, and we do that based on brand strength. So what I've learned just through past jobs is that if, our hub's in Northwest Arkansas, this is our home turf. This is where we get, but 60% of our revenue comes from Northwest Arkansas, which isn't like a massive market if you think about like other metro areas. But what I notice is my next best markets after that are the ones that are adjacent to it, right? Yeah. And then when those markets start doing good, then I'm opening up to expanding into a market next to those. So like a good example would be, we would probably launch into Memphis once Little Rock, Central Arkansas got to a certain brand strength. That would be my ticker to, I need to start doing my due diligence, doing market research over there, which is one of the reasons why we're in Northeast Oklahoma looking at Southwest Missouri, because we already are so strong here in Northwest Arkansas. Yeah.
So I want to ask you about some of your flavors.
Yeah, let's do it.
You have the standard flavors. You got the peach, you have the strawberry, but you also have flavors, like blueberry lemonade, mango nata. Who comes up with the new flavors, and how does that testing usually go? Is it just you in a room drinking them?
I don't want you guys to visualize me in a room drinking. Like that's not the same thing. No, we do have. At
least turn the lights on.
Yeah, right. It's me.
You in a dark, damp closet, just pounding cider.
Crying and like, this would be a good flavor. No, it's. I have a production team. It's about six different people led by our. We used to call him our creative director, but he's our production director, Sean Johnson. He's super, super talented. And we'll get them to start with like, we have like a pool of items that we get from customer feedback, market feedback, our own team, like our staff. Like, it doesn't matter if you work in the tap room, if you work out in the market, like everybody gets a say. It's like, it'd be really cool if you did this. And then we all kind of get together as a group. It's like, let's test these out. And then they will start doing the blind taste. Now, I used to jump in, like probably the first 5 or 6 years I did it. But I don't hang around the production facility as much with all the market expansion. And some of those got real weird. Like real weird. Like when you go into the early times of testing, like some of that stuff is terrible. Like we spare you guys a lot. Where it's like, because there's some point where like there'll be a random ingredient where it's like, what if we try like spirulina? Or just something weird with licorice. What if we did whatever? And then we're just mixing things, and we'll mark the numbers at the bottom of these cups so it's a true blind
Pepsi challenge.
Yeah. My favorite one back in the day was when we were trying our first hop cider. And there's a number of different hops that you could try. I mean, it's just endless. And so we tried 12 different hops, all with a similar cider base, to see what would work and what didn't. And we all picked, like, it was like horse racing. Like, we're picking our favorite hop, and we're like, that's going to be the one that wins. And we all were wrong. It ended up being the most common, easygoing hop is Cascade. That's it. Like the most, in brewers, it's like the most boring, like everybody has a Cascade beer. And so we did it, but it was just amazing. It was excellent. And we would have went with our own biases if we just, picked whatever our favorite was and ran with it. And so it's kind of a team effort, really. And we then have stages of where that goes from there. Because, obviously the awful stuff stays back with us, right? And then it gets ruled out. So then when something has promise, it becomes a single release, small batch release in the tap room. So I used to joke about how like most of our customers in the tap room, and they own up to this, they're my guinea pigs. It's like, all right, well, we have like 14 to 16 different ciders, because I'm going to throw in probably half of them be real weird. And I want you guys to tell me what you think. And sometimes like we'll throw a weird one out and it'll hit. So most recent example is that was strawberry dill pickle. Like it was supposed to be a April Fool's joke that became real. And
high in electrolytes.
And now it's one we have to bring back every year. Like, it's just crushes it. But then once it starts doing well in the tap room, then we take it to the next level to where it becomes kind of, we call it in the market an LTO, which is a limited time offer. And we'll send it out in kegs for bars and restaurants, very limited. That's actually how the Mangonada here started. It just became our best seller in the tap room. We were just talking earlier today about like the slush form is probably one of our best.
Big fan.
Oh, it's just
Huge fan.
Tahini rim.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. We can't. It gets so many tears whenever you have to take it off because it's like it's cold weather. We don't need that one anymore. We got these other ones.
Drinking this.
Yeah, right. I mean, it still doesn't keep people from being upset. So we do a limited run on like the draft, and then if that takes off, then you do a limited run of cans. Then it becomes a seasonal program, and then maybe it'll become a year round. So one of the only ciders that made it through every one of those was the hibiscus, which is still to this day our flagship. It's about 40% of what we sell. But it was just supposed to be a one-time spring seasonal. It's like, it's flowery. That'd be fun. We can't think of anything else for the spring, and it just took off. You don't get to pick your flagship.
Yeah. How long does that process usually take, going from testing on the guinea pigs in the tap room to full-scale staple of the business?
If we're doing it right, probably about 3 years. Because you don't want to spend, especially post-COVID, you don't want to spend so much money into cost of goods on something that has very little to no data. I mean, at that point, that's a risk that you can't really reel back. And we've done that several points. Like there's been several ciders that we put out in cans that we thought was a great idea. I think one of them was... if I go back and tell it myself, there was one that we came out with years ago called Cucumber Mint, which
I remember that one.
Did really well in the tap room.
I liked that one.
Really well in the tap room. And then we just were like, you know what? We're going to release it to cans right away. And so we did. And we ended up having to like take most of it back because the market just was like, wasn't ready for it then. Funny enough, like 3-4 years later, cucumber like just took off, and anything did it. I think we were just too ahead of our time. But like, again, if we would have done the proper testing, research, eased it out there, that I think that would have made more of a difference. And these are things that you learn after being 10 years of like making mistakes, right? It's like, one of my mentors always told me, like, hurry up and fail. Because like it's those failures that are going to lead to your greatest successes. And I think we did a great job of getting plenty of failures under our belt and, making it out the other side,
Yeah, it seems like it's informed a really effective strategy in, how you slowly on-ramp or release those new flavors and similarly enter new markets. It's kind of like this gradual progression on both ends. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on kind of as that progression geographically extends, if that might even inform, flavor concepts. I could see just regional or geographical approaches to flavor releases.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because that's something that we learned in like just the last couple of years as we're reminding ourselves, because, we went through this stint where we didn't do any market expansion. And so it was almost like, okay, what did we learn 3-4 years ago when we were doing this? Like kind of remind ourselves. And one of the things that I think we did wrong when we launched is we took our home market and we're like, here are the trends we're seeing. And then we're like, so this is what everybody wants. And that's definitely not the case for any product, come to find out. That's, every area is going to have their different demographics, their different wants. And so we started picking up on trends based on regions and demographics, to where, an example, I have a core 4 that I go out with: the hibiscus, the blackberry, peach, and strawberry. There are 4 year-rounds. They're everywhere. But depending on the region that you're in, will depend on which one of those it takes off as like one of the top flavors. Now, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be hibiscus because it's the best known, but like all the other ones, they flip-flop all the time. And so in some of these markets, like there is a stronger demand for a certain type of cider. Maybe it's they want something more tropical. This wants more refreshing. Maybe this area wants something more sweet. So yeah, the regions and the market launches have really dictated some of those flavor concepts, which does make it harder, because you don't want to just make one flavor for one region. Like whatever flavor you come out with, the idea is you want to kind of, incrementally build that growth in every market. So, but it is great feedback to have that as we're going into some of these new markets.
So you wouldn't necessarily be working on like a barbecue sauce flavored cider for the Memphis expansion.
Not with that attitude.
It's a finger licking good.
I mean, Memphis, Kansas City, we can get a couple markets for the barbecue, And I worked for a hot minute for craft beer. They had one called the Rauch beer, which is a smoked beer. It's a very, very novelty. But if you like, if you're kind of into smoky scotches, or if you're into like a mezcal that has a nice smoke to it, then you might enjoy a sip of
cigarette
Rauch beer. More barbecue than cigarette, but yeah.
So what does the next 5 years look like for, Black Apple?
I think we want to keep the market expansion going, but I really want to get back to innovation. But just this time, innovate with like some strategy and take our time doing it. Where I think, and this isn't just me, I've talked to a lot of fellow entrepreneurs that were the same way, no matter if they were manufacturing a product or not. But like in those early years of excitement, and you're like, you want to scale. It's almost like the second you have an idea, you want to just run with it, because you have this, innate fear that maybe somebody else will do it before you do, as though everything's a patent. And it's like the first person there is going to be the one who wins the golden goose. So, and I think what I've learned through all of this is that we can plant seeds, because that's what we're doing with these market expansions. Like when you launch into, when we launched into Tulsa, there wasn't a big cash flow from that. It was like we were planting a seed. We were educating the market. We were slowly building relationships in those, getting into the local retailers and the bars and restaurants, and just growing that brand. And because of that, it's organically grown year over year. So the idea is if you diversify and keep launching into these regions as you're innovating your product line, then you are diversifying your portfolio, even though we're still just hard apple cider, like still able to kind of grow that. And it also makes it to where it spreads it out. So if something were to happen, not necessarily like pandemic, But like if it were like, some poor weather came through in one of our regions, or if something political happened in another one of our regions, like we're so spread out in these different markets that it's not going to just tear us all down at once, which is something that we dealt with like back when we were first starting this and we were just Arkansas only. We had a distributor we just signed for one for the entire state. They were out of Little Rock. If there was a snowstorm in Little Rock, or all our sales in the state just shut down. If they had a software issue, the entire state shut down. I'm with, I think it's 7 or 8 different distributors now. And if something happens in Little Rock, it just affects the Little Rock market, these
Tough luck, Little Rock.
Yeah. I mean, they have their share of wins. So that's all part of the plan. Just kind of keep that slow growth going, keep diversifying the portfolio, bring out some like fun new innovations based on that market feedback that we're getting from our customers, really.
So you're like the Johnny Appleseed of...
Yeah, I'm just... Wow. just God, yeah. I can't beat that analogy. No, just spreading the love.
Yeah. Well, I can say we're excited to see you continue to grow in these next 5 years. So let's go the opposite direction. Take a look into the past.
Okay.
If you had a time machine, go back and tell younger Leo a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, God.
And it could be Leo from 20 years ago. It could be Leo from yesterday, whatever you prefer.
Man, advice that I give younger... Well, I mean, I am younger, Leo, I like to think.
Yeah, this is good. You're still in your prime.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, I would probably go back, tell them to slow down. Slow down. That's it. Like not take any less risk, but just like be more patient with the risk that you take. Like less knee-jerk reactions to things, which is, I don't know how I'm going to explain to him about the pandemic. That's going to be a lot for him to take on, where it's like, there's going to be this big global pandemic that's going to change everything.
Invest in facial masks.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. He will never trust future me.
And buy land in Springdale around there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's a lot that I could, do some back to the future stuff and try to, profit from. But yeah, I think it would be just, take your time with the risk that you take. Like I don't have any regrets on risk that we take, but just that us sticking with them or not going into them so fast that we don't have a good plan or strategy laid out.
Yeah. How are you finding yourself slowing down nowadays?
Oh, did I say I was slowing down? Oh, no. I'm telling advice that I give my past self, not necessarily that I'm taking it right now.
Yeah, you're not taking it.
Yeah,
your younger self.
No,
Do you think your younger self would have taken it?
Oh, probably not. No, he probably would have thought I was crazy. Yeah. I'd been like, you drank a little too much of my product, buddy. Like, get him.
I'm actually just speed up.
Yeah, probably. No, I think we invested the last few years, and this is something I didn't think about when we started the business. We invested into data. Like a lot of people, when they're talking about investing in infrastructure, you hear about like equipment, overhead, staff. I never talked to any of my mentors to find out that data is so important, and it was something we didn't invest in. And it made it difficult to make strategic decisions and slow down and like really sparse it out. Because if the data's off, it's not just right. You're acting on bad data. You make bad decisions typically. And so I think that's something that I've learned and is making me slow down, because now I have a different way of viewing things rather than just, my gut says, let's do this. I don't have to go off my gut anymore. I can go off the spreadsheets that I didn't spend enough time with in the first 5 years. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I would say for our listeners, viewers who have not had the pleasure of enjoying a Black Apple hard cider and want to know more about the product or even want to connect with you in some capacity, where can they find out more?
Yeah. So we have almost all of our social handles are at Black Apple Hard Cider. And then our website, blackapplehardcider.com. We have everything from our what's on tap, our cocktail menu, which we just released our summer cocktail menu on our website. If you want to rent a keg for a party or something, you want to reserve the tap room for a reception or a corporate event, you want to just have a group out, we have links for all of that on blackapplehardcider.com. Check it out.
Awesome. We will make sure to tag that in the show notes.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming in. Thank you for bringing these awesome mango natas.
Yeah.
To our audience, make sure to check out Black Apple and follow the Startup Junkies podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Ooh, nice
good
touch.
outro, huh?
Well done.
Yeah. Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share with a friend. Subscribe and review because it matters to us and we want to hear from you. If you're interested in learning how to work with us, check out the information below. See you next week.